Welcome, everyone, to our next round of session spotlights for Convergence 2026. This is an opportunity for you to get to know our upcoming leaders, learn about their sessions, and to give you a better idea of what you would like to register for during Convergence 2026 in New Orleans. Today, we will be hearing from Margery Erickson, Stacy Schlutsmeyer, Marcia Weiss, Sandy Cahill, and Rachel Snack. Registration is open. We have got just under 1 week left for advanced priority registration. Priority registration begins on Monday, October 27th, and general registration opens on November 10th. If you're interested in getting a head start on signing up for classes, please head online or give us a call and we would be happy to help. As a reminder, Convergence 2026 will be taking place in New Orleans, Louisiana from August 12th through 16th. You can find a digital copy of the registration booklet online. There, you'll find all kinds of information about the different sessions and events taking place, including the marketplace, exhibits, fashion show, keynote speaker tours, and more. We will be hosting over 100 sessions ranging from 90-minute seminars to 3-day workshops. As we learn more about these workshops today, please put any questions that you have in the Q&A section. This is your time to get answers directly from the instructors. First up, we welcome Margery Erickson, who's going to be talking about the business side of fiber arts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I started weaving over 30 years ago, and just a few years after that, I found myself selling what I made at local craft shows as well as consignment shops. During this seminar, I'll be sharing lessons I've learned as well as my continued evolution as a weaver and as an entrepreneur. Let's take a look at what this workshop or the seminar is going to include. Yes, it's called the business side of fiber arts. It's for anyone who wants to do something, maybe sell their fiber arts, or perhaps maybe share what you know in classes. First of all, who am I? Maybe you've never heard of me. I consider myself a goal setter, educator. I taught special education for 30 years, an entrepreneur, problem solver, and like many of you, I love fiber. Can you answer yes to at least one of these questions? Are your closets full of your handmade items? Are your friends saying, you should sell what you make? Or, like me, running out of friends and family to give gifts to? Are you thinking now of taking your hobby to the next level? My husband kept telling me about my hobby, and I remember one day saying, honey, it's not a hobby anymore. But you might have some questions. Will people buy what you make or what you're going to share? Pay for what you know? How will you know if your product or what you have to say will stand out? Well, we're going to take a look at the internet and social media, because there's so many different apps out there and so many different places that you can share what you know and also maybe sell what you know or sell what you make. And we'll talk about what's the difference between selling platforms, e-commerce, marketplace, and website builders. And of course, social media. It's out there and it's here to stay. Where, what, when, how are you going to use it? What about good images? How do you create them? Do you need a professional? Can you do it yourself? And how and when would you use them? What about recordings? Are they of any value? When could you use those? And of course, record keeping. There are many different ways of keeping records, and we'll talk about a few that you might work for you. And of course, pricing. I think that's one of the biggest issues people have is how do you price your item, or how do you come up with an hourly rate for maybe a talk or something you're going to demonstrate? And do you have a way of finding cost-efficient supplies? And will you ever need help? I know when I was weaving and I was making jackets, I had someone else do my sewing. And of course, we have craft shows. There are indoor and outdoor shows. There is a difference. Maybe one works for you, maybe both do. But before you actually sign up for a craft show, there's some questions you might want to ask, and we'll go over those. Location, not just where you live, but also the craft show. If you are in an area where there's a high population near a big city, and that sounds great, but maybe if you're out in the country somewhere, you have to get to this location, or you have to find the show if you're going to go do shows. And if you're going to do that, you're going to need a transportation that's dependable, as well as a way of getting your things there. And how do you pack? How do you pack up everything? Make sure that it's all going to fit into the vehicle you're using. So when you get to the show, you can set up without a lot of hassle. Of course, there are other options. And how do they work? We have consignment shops, galleries, trunk shows, and now pop-ups. But what else are you willing to do to promote yourself? Maybe you're going to teach, demonstrate, join guilds. And then there's that customer service. We all love happy customers. But what happens with you when you have an unhappy customer? How are you going to handle that? Of course, you really want to do what you love to do or talk about. The idea is when you're finished with this 3-hour seminar, you'll have some resources to help you create a business plan that will suit your needs.
You cover so many bases in this class. That is going to be jam-packed for sure. I want to ask, I saw that there is a prerequisite listed about having computer skills, and I would like to, if you could elaborate on that so folks that are thinking about signing up know what they need, what experience they need to have in order to join.
I'd say the willingness to try things and check things out. If you're someone who's not afraid of trying different areas, because if you're going to do something on the computer to promote yourself, you do need to be comfortable with making clicks and so on. Like maybe designing your own website if you want to, but you don't have to. I just say the regular things that most of us do on a computer.
Okay, awesome. We've got a question here from Christine talking about how you're going to be providing a ton of information. Is there going to be a handout that folks can take with them?
Well, what I'm going to do is after people attend, I will send everyone a PDF of the presentation, everything in that, and then I'll also have some other resources available.
Awesome. And obviously, so much of this is covered, and you talked about folks being able to walk out of this class with an idea of where they want to go with the business side of their creativity. Are you going to be talking a little bit about the different kind of business structures and helping people plan a business model that they get to walk out with?
We'll do a little bit of that, but I think it's going to be depending on if you're going to be making something all by yourself, if you're going to have other people with you, or if you're going to be a speaker. So I'd say we'll touch upon that, and what I'll do is I'll survey the audience and find out what their needs are, and then I can adapt as we go. And we'll also have some activities that people, class participation things that help people get started and think a little bit about if they want to do this. Sometimes people listen and they go, I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for this. Or maybe you're at a point you're thinking you're going to do it and you put it aside for a couple of years and you come back to it. So hopefully we can address that.
Awesome. That sounds great. And having that kind of sounding board and touch point while you're working through all of these questions is certainly beneficial. So, thank you so much for walking us through this class. Again, that was Margery Erickson talking about the business side of fiber arts, which is a 3-hour seminar taking place Thursday, August 13th. Up next, we've got Stacy Schlutsmeyer, who is going to be talking about Sulawesi tablet weaving.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about this Sulawesi class that I'll be teaching. This will be a one-day class on Thursday. So Sulawesi, the name comes from an island in Indonesia where there was one of the subgroups there had used this technique to make elaborate belts. The modern technique as we do it is a little bit different from, typically a little bit different from what they did initially in Sulawesi, but we've still kept the name, and that's how it's commonly known. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you have a little bit, I have a few images to share. So Sulawesi it's a 3-color technique. So each tablet is threaded the same, and 2 of those threads are a background color, and then the 2 other threads are 2 different contrasting colors. In the original Sulawesi, it would have been red for the background and white and indigo blue for your contrast colors, but there's a whole range of different color options that you can use and that provide different sort of effects. So one thing that Sulawesi does, as you can see here, is it takes advantage of the twist that is introduced when you turn the tablets to make these smooth diagonal lines. And with the contrast colors, controlling the direction of the turning of cards, you can control which of your contrast colors come up. So in this picture here, you can see this band, or all of these bookmarks were made on the same warp. And the difference in how they look is based on how the turning was done. And so you see, you can kind of choose. Some of these have sort of black lines on a more white background, and some of them have black lines, or some of them have white lines on a more black background. So there's a lot of flexibility with this technique, and there's a lot of really interesting design possibilities that it offers. And just to show a couple of some other projects that I've done with it. And here you can see, there's a lot of things I really like about Sulawesi. It has this textured background that I think gives a lot of interest to the resulting fabric. The diagonal lines, obviously, and being familiar with how Sulawesi works and how it makes these diagonals. Actually, there's a number of other techniques that work on diagonal lines that work in a similar way to this, and so it can be a useful technique to sort of understand other things. And just wanted to show a couple other things that I've made using this technique and some of the possibilities for what you can do. So this is an intermediate level class. I asked that students coming to class have made at least 3 other tablet woven bands. I want you to be familiar with handling the cards, how to warp up, although we will cover that in class, how to read a pattern draft, the basics of weaving in this, so that you're ready to absorb some of the things that we're doing here. The technique is, I call it a 2x2, because you work in blocks of 2 cards. So 2 cards will work as a unit together, either turned forwards or backwards, and 2 picks at a time. So you get this 2x2 effect. For supplies, I'd like you to bring some sharp scissors, pencil and eraser, because we will be doing some pattern design. We will be working warp weighted. So I ask that everyone bring a 1 liter water bottle to class, and I will have some extras as well. And that is, of course, something that can be acquired locally. Also, for warping, if you have warping pegs and can bring those to class, that would be helpful. But again, I will have extras of those available as well. So during class, we will start out the day with a little bit of sort of background information on sort of what Sulawesi was like historically. I will show how we do warping. So because all of the cards are threaded the same, we can use speed warping. So I will show you how to do the speed warping. We'll cover the basic principles of how to do Sulawesi tablet weaving, and I'll give you some patterns to follow. And then in the afternoon, we'll talk about the principles of how to design in Sulawesi, and students will have an opportunity to make their own designs and weave those.
These are so beautiful. The patterns are so intricate. Thank you for sharing those pictures.
Thank you.
And thank you for discussing the kind of intermediate level, what folks should know going in. I also wanted to touch on the materials. So there is a $15 material fee for this class. Can you let folks know what they'll be getting for that?
Right. So for class, I will basically provide almost everything you need. You will get cards, you'll get yarn to make the warps. And also during class, I will be providing looms for students to use, looms and shuttles to use during class. So yeah, but students will get to take home a detailed handout, the yarn and the cards.
Awesome. Okay, so if you're providing the loom and these materials, what would we expect folks to walk away with off the loom? Are they going to get to make some samples that they get to leave with, if they don't
Yeah,
finish the full warp?
so we'll have you know, as much as they can weave in the course of the day. But especially for learning a new technique like this, I like to think of these bands as sort of a sketch pad. We're not really working on trying to have something that's going to make a nice finished product. We're working on experimenting with things and being free to make mistakes, try things out. Oh, that didn't work. I didn't like that. You make a mistake, you can just reset your cards. But the warp will be long enough that they should have plenty of room to be able to again experiment, try different things out, try different patterns, see how really get a sense of how this technique works.
And will that handout that you are providing folks have some of these patterns that you're going to be reviewing in there, in addition to the patterns they're going to learn how to make themselves?
Yeah. So the pattern will have some, or sorry, the handout will have some patterns for the students to weave, and we'll also have some blank pattern grids for them to be able to do designing on.
So exciting. Oh, so cool. I can't wait to see what folks make in the class. Thank you so much for giving us some more information on this. Again, that was Stacy Schlutsmeyer talking about Sulawesi tablet weaving, which is a one-day workshop taking place Thursday, August 13th. Up next, we've got Marcia Weiss, who's going to be talking about the Doup Leno Basics class.
Hello. Welcome to everyone to this session. I'm so looking forward to being in New Orleans with everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can talk about my class. So bear with me while I get the technology up and running. All right, hopefully you're seeing Doup Leno Basics.
Yep.
This is a 90-minute seminar, which will happen on Friday, August 14th. I've been doing Leno for quite a number of decades. I learned it in my corporate life in the home furnishings industry. So what will we be covering? We will certainly be looking at designing Lenos, whether these are, and this is all Doup Leno. So this is loom controlled Leno. I believe in the loom doing the work for us. So this is how to set up your loom so that it does the crossing. So for those of you who might not even know what a Leno is, Leno means the warp yarns crossing to form a very tight, very secure, but can be very open fabric. And these are some examples on the screen. And to me, it's a little bit of magic when this happens on the loom. So we'll be looking at the different possibilities of how one designs Lenos, whether the fabric is 100% Leno or Leno happens in just certain areas, whether you wanted light to transmit through the fabric in only specific areas. Doup Leno would be a great way to do this. We're going to talk about how to make dupes for your loom. And I will have a loom there with me that's set up so that you each have a chance to try it and see just exactly how it works. The method that I'm going to teach is the one that I learned. I've tried some different ways and I find this to be most effective. So we'll look at how to make dupes for your loom. We'll talk about how to measure any loom so that you can make dupes. I actually have a little wooden jig that you're seeing on the slide right now for making dupes, but I've also done it really effectively with cardboard. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in class. We will look at how you set up your loom with the Leno pairs, the harnesses that pair together to form Lenos, and with helper harnesses at the back of the loom. And these are two examples. I shot these in our studio. I'm at a university in Philadelphia, and I shot these in our studio just this past week. Two examples of Lenos with dupes, and the dupes are in both cases, the cotton cord that you see coming down from the top of the harness or shaft and down through the heddle-eye. But again, we'll work through all of that. You don't need to know anything about Leno to do this workshop, this seminar. You just want to be curious. And here's, again, another example that I shot in the studio. This fabric is all Leno, meaning all of the pairs of ends are crossing each other. And you can see it's a very, very open, but yet very stable textile. And another shot on the loom. So we'll be looking at what does Leno look like on the loom. And this is actually on my travel loom. So this is the loom I'll be bringing with me. And another shot. And with Leno weaving, we have some sheds that are really joyful and some that are not as joyful. And we'll talk about why. And part of that's because you're pulling up and down on warp ends at the same time. So what should you bring? What is the supply list for you? Paper and pen or pencil, or a tablet, however you take notes, and bring your curiosity and questions. There is a $5 materials fee, and for that materials fee, you'll receive a full color booklet that will go through, it will include all of the slides that I showed during the 90-minute seminar, and then some additional details and some additional resources. And typically there are some little surprises tucked into the booklets, like possibly textiles. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I hope to see you in New Orleans. Here's my email. Feel free to reach out. I am more than happy to answer questions in advance. So I hope to see you in New Orleans.
Thank you for sharing that. Those visuals were so cool. I've never done Doup Leno before, so that was so cool to see that, but I can only imagine what having the loom on site to have that hands-on experience is going to give everybody as well. So thank you again for going into that. I think you touched on everything. Just to highlight here at the end that with that $5 fee, folks are going to get that handout. And you don't need to bring anything special with you, just that curiosity and a way to take some notes. So thank you again for giving us some more information on that class. Again, that was Marcia Weiss talking about the Doup Leno Basics class, which is a 90-minute seminar taking place Friday, August 14th. Up next, we've got Sandy Cahill, who's going to be talking about the edge finishing and sewing seams for hand-woven garments class.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Erica. And I am so looking forward to seeing everybody in New Orleans next summer. It's going to be hot, but we're going to be hot with all the activity we're going to be doing in this class. So I'm teaching a one-day workshop that is on Friday, the 14th, and it is all day. So it's 9 to 12 and then 1:30 to 4:30. And in this class, we're going to be up and active and very much learning everything. So most weavers have beautiful handwoven fabric that they want to sew into garments. This workshop will give you the seaming and edge finishing skills to do just that. Edge finishing is always a challenge, and if you want the edges of your finished garments to be thoughtfully finished to complement your handwoven fabric, then you will need to take this workshop because you're going to be learning 4 different edge finishing techniques and making take-home samplers to practice these 4 different edges. Seaming is also challenging, and seaming handwoven fabric can add additional bulk to the handwoven fabric. Plus, you don't always want to line a garment just to hide the raw edges of the seams. In this workshop, you will learn a unique, reversible, non-bulky seam and make a take-home sampler so you can remember how to do it. The samplers that you're going to make, we're going to be doing 2 different edge finishing technique samplers. The first one, you're going to learn edge number 1 and edge number 2. And then the second sampler, you're going to be learning edge number 3 and edge number 4. And you'll be getting to practice these 4 different edges on these samplers, and then you're going to take home these samplers as well so that you can remember how to do those edge finishing techniques. And for the seaming technique, you're going to take home this long sampler that is segmented into 6 different sections, and it's a 6-step process to learn this seaming technique. And you're going to be working on this fabric right here that you're going to get in the class so that you can practice and learn the 6-step different seaming technique. And this technique is also reversible. That means that the seam looks exactly the same on the back side as the front side. So you can make reversible garments and really enjoy the non-bulky seam that you're going to be learning. In the class also, you're going to be getting this take-home notebook. And in this notebook, there's lots of really treasured information. You're going to get the step-by-step instructions inside the notebook that show you step-by-step how to do each of the different techniques. So here is edge finish number 1 and edge finish number 2. And then also inside your notebook, I'm going to give you the hand-woven fabric and all the supplies that you need to make the sampler for edge number 1 and edge number 2. And then here is edge number 3 and 4. And again, you get the sampler fabric right here that I'm hand weaving to give to you in this notebook. And you get all the supplies you need to make edge number 3. Here's all the pictures for edge number 3. And then edge number 4, here's all the pictures for that too. For the seaming technique, it's a 6-step process, and you get pictures that show you each of the 6 different steps to make the seaming technique. And you're also going to get the hand-woven fabric inside your notebook that you're going to use to make this seaming technique. And also in the notebook, I'm going to give you my favorite tips and techniques for sewing on handwovens, and also my favorite supplies and a reference page as well. So you get to take this notebook home, and it's going to have in it then your finished samplers that you have made in class, plus all the detailed instructions that you will need to replicate these techniques when you get home. The class fee is $40, and that includes the notebook that you're going to take home, plus all of the handwoven sample fabric that you're going to use to make the samplers. And you're going to, when you're finished with the samplers, you put them back inside the notebook so that everything is all together when you take it home, this complete package here. So that's about it as far as the what we're going to be doing in class. We will be using sewing machines, and I would like every student to bring a sewing machine. And I like it if it's your own sewing machine, because you're going to feel more comfortable learning these techniques on the machine that you're used to using. However, if you're not able to bring a machine, I will have two in class that students can use, or you can share with a buddy, because we're not going to be sewing all the whole time that we're in the class. So it's easy to share 2 or 3 students to a machine and still get the work done and get your samples made for your notebook that you're going to be taking home. I know HGA is working on getting some machines sewing machines that could be rented, but then we will know closer to the convergence time what that rental system might look like. But like I said, if you're not able to bring a machine, that's fine. I will have 2 machines in the classroom that you will certainly be able to use.
Incredible. That notebook looks like such a cool resource to walk away with for sure. And I can't believe you are providing all of these woven samples for everybody as well.
Yeah.
If
Uh-huh.
somebody is interested in trying some of these out on their own handwovens, if there's like certain weight fabrics or things that they're used to, are they able to bring some of their own along, or would it be better for them to focus on your provided samples for this class?
We want everyone to accomplish the samples, but there will be time in class after you've made your sample to do some testing. So yes, if a student would like to bring their own handwoven fabric along, they can practice these techniques using their sewing machine on their own fabric. I also will have some scraps and things available so you can practice your favorite techniques or learn, like for instance, the seaming technique. We're going to learn it in a straight way, like just straight up and down, but making the seam in a curved way, like for instance, in setting a set in sleeve, that would be a good challenge for someone to do. And I would have some scrap fabrics that are cut into curves that you could practice that if you would want to.
Great. And we do have a question here as well. If somebody is bringing their own machine, is there anything particular about the machine that any capabilities it needs to have? Is there a particular kind of machine they should bring?
Yes, we would like to have the sewing machine have a serpentine stitch, which is a 3-pegged zigzag. It kind of essentially makes like a lazy S, or a zigzag. Either of those would be perfect. And then, of course, it needs to have straight stitch, and just so those 2 stitches would be the only ones we are using. And a regular presser foot, just like, the regular foot that you normally would use for sewing. And sewing on handwovens is often kind of challenging because the fabric is kind of bulky. But so I'll show you how to adjust your tension to make it the correct way.
Wonderful. And like you had mentioned, we are working on getting some sewing machines that'll be available. So if anybody is considering this class and isn't confident about that, I know Sandy mentioned that she will have some extra machines, but HGA should be able to assist in that as well. So just keep an eye out for those notifications. I did also want to ask you, it is listed as an intermediate class. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of prerequisite experience you hope folks bring to the classroom?
I want students to be comfortable with the sewing machine, and have done a little bit of sewing before. You don't have to be an expert sewer, and that's the kind of student that would really benefit from this class, is someone who is kind of tentative about sewing, but can operate a sewing machine and understands how to thread a sewing machine, etc. So that's why I call it intermediate. It's not for the novice person who has never touched a sewing machine, but for someone who has operated a sewing machine before and is not afraid of it. I think you're going to enjoy these techniques and they're going to be very useful to you, I think, as you get the bravery to make garments out of your hand woven.
Absolutely. And this session sold out at last Convergence. So I definitely would say folks are enjoying it. And we're so glad to have you back again this year so that more folks can learn these techniques.
Yeah.
Again, that was Sandy Cahill talking about the Edge Finishing and Sewing Seams for Handwoven Garments class, which is a one-day workshop taking place on Friday, August 14th. And last but not least today, we have Rachel Snack, who's going to be talking about exploring shape through Overshot.
Hi. Okay, let me share my screen here. Perfect. Mute to share. Does that look okay, Erica?
It does.
Awesome, amazing. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Snack, and I am going to be teaching a course called Exploring Shape Through Overshot. And this is a 3-day course. The reason it is 3 days is because it's really an investigation of kind of 2 layers. The first thing that we'll be covering is just how to weave overshot in general. So overshot requires weaving with 2 shuttles at the same time. So we, categorize this course as an intermediate class because it would be nice to come in having some floor loom weaving experience or multi-shaft weaving experience. But this is definitely, if you've only ever woven with 1 shuttle, this can really help expand design possibilities by weaving with 2 shuttles at the same time. And then beyond just learning to weave overshot, then we'll be studying how to manipulate the structure to actually draw and create shapes with the structure. So essentially, you are able to abstract the structure and weave areas of overshot that doesn't cover the full face of the cloth. So these are examples of my work. This is something that I have studied for many years, and I weave a lot of overshot in my work. So you can see on both of these pieces that the one on the left side is a true overshot. The one on the right is actually just a pointed twill. But by adding a tabby pick and utilizing the structure to draw with, you can get this beautiful centered shape. These are other examples. You can also utilize the weaving on the right is weaving not only by drawing with overshot, but weaving with a 3rd shuttle to add in an additional color. And the same on the right sample, you can see that, again, the pattern doesn't go to the full selvage to selvage, but there's multiple colors happening. And the one on the left is a great example of how you can even manipulate further by adding in dyed yarns and dyeing your warp and dyeing your weft. And that's something we won't be doing any actual dyeing in the course, but we will be discussing how that can expand even further this technique. And so I think the other thing that's really fun with this technique and something that I do a lot in my work is material exploration. And so the sample on the left is actually not, I haven't drawn with the structure at all. It is going selvage to selvage, but I am weaving with a roving, so like an unspun fiber to get this really like fluffy cloud-like texture. And there's like so many different ways with this technique that you can create pattern. So this is a great example. This was actually part of my thesis collection many, many years ago. And Marcia Weiss, who you heard from earlier, she was actually my thesis advisor. So it's great to be here on the same Zoom with her. But this is a great example of how you can utilize the same warp and get many, many different patterns out of it. So this is all the same warp, but just by changing the materiality and the treadling and by utilizing like different yarns, you can get vastly different aesthetics. And I like to show this as well because the sample on the right is a great example of how you can actually weave selvage to selvage, but just use inlay with another color to still create shape. So there's many ways that this can be expanded. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that there's no official materials fee with this course, but there will be an optional materials kit that you can purchase from me that is curated with a lot of different experimental yarns and fibers. So I also personally in my work, but I also encourage students who are learning overshot and exploring with these techniques to really push the boundaries of what they consider like a typical weaving yarn and explore more experimental materials because it lends itself so well to overshot and this technique. And so these are examples of using the weaving on the left is using a rami bark from Japan, and the weaving on the right is using just a raffia that would typically be used for basket weaving. And the same here, the weaving on the left is another naturally dyed raffia. And the weaving on the right is actually not experimental, it's all linen, but it's a good example of how you can also create kind of motifs within drawing on your cloth. So that's what I've got. Let me know if you have any questions.
This creates such beautiful textures. Thank you for sharing all of these images. It's so inspiring to see what you have done with this technique.
Thank
Um,
you.
I wanted to back up just a second because you talked about having an optional materials kit where you're going to be providing some of these materials. For
Yeah.
folks listening in, can you, I know it's in other paperwork, other places, but how much is that optional kit and how much material would they get for that?
So I think it's $65. It's somewhere in that range. So it's affordable. And I think I just created them. And of course, I think there's like 5 or 6 different types of yarn. So there's like a paper yarn, a raffia. There's like sari silk ribbon. There's a tape yarn. I'm trying to remember what else I included. Oh, there's sasawashi, which is like a kind of a thicker spun paper that creates a really beautiful texture. So they're all like what you would consider like atypical for weaving.
Awesome. Those sounds so fun. And what about for the loom? Should folks have a pre-dressed loom? Are you guys going to warp and dress the loom in class?
I believe that you come with your warp created. And again, I'm trying to remember how we structured it to save on time to actually get through the weaving. I think you bring your warp created and dress it in the course, but that might have been updated to save on time. So I think look at the description for that detail, whether or not you have to have your loom fully dressed or if you're just creating your warp first.
I think we just had it popped into the chat for
Oh,
us.
beautiful.
It does say pre-made 8-2 cotton or 8-2 cotton warp. Students will get specific instructions once they sign up.
Great.
So you'll
That
have
sounds
the warp.
awesome.
Yes, so I think that, so the threading might not be done then, but you've got the warp, so you'll be ready to
Yeah.
hit the ground running. Okay, great. And if students have their own unique materials they want to try, or what other kinds of weft materials do you recommend people bring to use during class?
So truly, you can really bring anything. Typical, like standard overshot is like you want your structure to pick to be a little bit heavier than your tabby and your warp pick. So something like an 8-2 cotton for warp, then you might want to bring 8-4 cotton for the structure pick, just something like slightly thicker. And if someone just wants to weave with cotton and linen and wool and tencel and yarns that are what we would consider like the typical weaving yarns, that's totally fine. But you can also bring anything else that you have in your stash that's a little weird or funky, or especially if you have a yarn that you've like always wanted to use, but needed some guidance or needed some help coming up with how to use it. That is like my favorite thing to do. So bring some, maybe whatever you have that's accessible in your stash. And then also, I think the point of creating the materials kit is that if someone comes with what they have in their stash and then they see all of these materials in the way that I've utilized them and they want to try that, then they'll be able to access those as well because I'll have brought them.
Awesome. And with so many different kind of techniques that you talked about and ways to approach this, is there kind of maybe a number of samples or how much you kind of expect people to be able to weave in this 3-day workshop? Is finishing going to be addressed at all?
Good question. It's it really depends, because if you want to draw a shape, a really complicated overshot shape, that you could potentially spend your entire time working on one piece, because it can be pretty time consuming and slow to do that. However, if you're kind of being more abstract or not following a pattern, and just weaving a little bit quicker, you could get through a lot more. So I think that kind of depends where someone's passion lies. Also, if someone just wants to practice overshot, literally just mastering that, without doing any drawing, then they could, weave a lot more. So it kind of depends where the student's passion lies.
Awesome. So it's a little bit customizable there.
Mhm.
I think I have one more question here because I'm looking at the information that was popped into the chat. In terms of the overshot patterning, is there a particular overshot design that you're using in this class? Are folks able to just look up and pick whatever kind of overshot pattern that they want?
That's a great question. So with that information they get about how to create their warp, they'll get a packet with, I think it has 5 or 6 structures that are already designed that have the warp specifications, and they can choose from those structures. And then they'll know how many ends they need and how to create the warp before class. So they'll have those patterns also to weave, like they can pick one out of the 6 and weave the other 5 another time if they like them all, but they'll choose one for class.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for diving into this class with us. That was Rachel Snack again talking about exploring shape through overshot, which is a 3-day workshop taking place Friday through Sunday, August 14th through the 16th. Thank you all again for joining us today. You can find more information on our website, weavespindye.org. You can look under the Convergence tab, head to Sessions and Leaders, and find more about all of the classes and how to register. We are going to be offering these session spotlights every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time until mid-November, and the recordings will be available on HGA's YouTube channel. So if there are any other classes you're interested in, please join us, and I look forward to seeing you there.